Yeah, my name is Kim Renfro. I am an entertainment correspondent for Insider, and I also wrote the unofficial guide to Game of Thrones, which is a book coming out later this year. This panel was kind of inspired slash like completely taken from one chapter in my book. So I decided to focus on several different things for different chapters of the books, but obviously the costumes on this show are incredible. And, I mean, we have some great cosplayers in this room right now who are bringing those costumes to life. But what I really wanted to focus on was Daenerys Targaryen, Cersei Lannister, and Sansa Stark, primarily because not like every single character's journey is really told through their costume on the show, but with these three in particular, there's a very like clear arc, and there are so many stunning and like beautiful details that have a lot of importance, and I really like diving into the nitty-gritty, and so we're gonna be exploring those three gals today. So like I said, this is basically a chapter of my book that I've tried to condense down as much as possible so that we can do this in 40 minutes. So this is going to be kind of like a looser presentation of all of my thoughts that you can find in my book. I also have little like book cards up here if you guys want to pre-order the book, you can. It comes out on October 8th. In the book, full disclosure, there are no photos from the show because it's an unofficial guide to Game of Thrones. So this is a nice bonus for you all because you get to actually have a visual component as I walk you through all of the costumes. Without further ado, let's talk some costumes. Michelle Clapton is the lead costume designer on Game of Thrones. She was working on the show from the very, very beginning, and she's someone who is super detail-oriented. And she also had this really interesting directive from David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the showrunners, which was that they wanted Westeros to feel like it was a real place, but not something that was recognizable as a specific country. So obviously it's loosely inspired by like medieval England, but they specifically told her that they wanted to kind of bring in other elements of other cultures and other parts of the world. Frank, I'm finding my quotes. Also, please be patient with me as I shuffle my papers periodically. Oh, and I'm going to try and do questions at the end. So if you guys have any questions that come up, hopefully we'll have time for that. But basically, Michelle Clapton, in a really early video, which you can still find on YouTube, that HBO was pushing out all of these promos for the first season. And Michelle Clapton said in this costume featurette in 2011, she said, "We were trying to create a world that is incredibly gritty and real, where you completely believe it, but you don't actually quite know where it was. We decided to just research across the board. We immersed ourselves in museums and books and paintings, Persian, Inuit, Mongol, Japanese, everything." And so you'll see elements of all of these other styles that are kind of incorporated into the people of Westeros. And in Dany's case, well, she's in Essos. So the Lannister soldiers are one of my favorite examples of these. We'll get to Dany in a second, but like what Michelle Clapton was saying, she was like looking at Japanese, in this case samurai armor, and took elements of that and put it into the Lannister soldiers. So specifically like the little skirt part of the Lannister armor is very evocative of samurai. And Cersei also has elements of Japanese wear, but we'll get to her in a second. First, we're going to start with Dany, because who doesn't love Daenerys Targaryen? Pilot episode, she starts off in these like really soft lilac colors, which is first a really great nod to the books, because if you've read the books, you know that Targaryens typically have purple and like amethyst eyes. That was a little bit hard for the show to try and pull off, because not only did they not want to put these poor actors into like contact lenses for a decade, but it would have been way too expensive to CGI a different color eye. So Dany does not have purple eyes in the show, but she did start off with this sort of like purple toned costume. And the first iteration that we have with the pins at the shoulder, that's very like Grecian inspired. There's a certain type of Greek dress called a peplos, and it's literally just like a sheet of fabric that is pinned to your shoulders. It was very like practical, pretty easy. So we start her off with that, although this one is like basically completely sheer, which means that she's naked. You know, not the best situation that our Dany started off in. And then her wedding dress to Khal Drogo, she wears for the end of this pilot episode. Michelle Clapton said in a book that HBO released called Inside Game of Thrones, she wrote that she wanted the dress to unwrap as if it was a present for Drogo, which is like bleak. Here we are. But from the very beginning, Michelle Clapton was working in these really cool details of like the three-headed dragon pin. So this was obviously long before Dany's dragons were born, but she still had that Targaryen sigil inspiration in all of her accoutrements. Dany, very quickly, I kind of like skipped over all of her Dothraki wear, but we all know she very quickly goes straight from her wedding to Khal Drogo to wearing like all the traditional Dothraki leathers and like horsehair pants and all that jazz. It's not really until she gets pregnant and starts to come into a little bit of power and take control of the situation with the Khalasar that she starts to like skew towards her Targaryen roots a little bit in her costume. And so this top that she has with like the gold scaled detailing is one of my favorite Dany costumes from the early seasons. And we only see it in the sequence of events where Khal Drogo gets cut and then Miriam Az-Dor shows up and like everything goes to hell basically. But I think that it's really indicative of her status in the Khalasar and the demise of that, with her trying to kind of reach for that Targaryen power, and then everything goes horribly wrong. And then she's back in her wedding dress for the funeral pyre scene, which Michelle Clapton did on purpose as a way of sort of like symbolically closing that chapter of her life with Khal Drogo. She's wearing the exact same thing that she was wearing on their horrible wedding night. Fun times. I also love this shot from behind because this is also when we first start seeing her braids. I could honestly do an entire other panel on just the hair of Game of Thrones, but obviously we all know that Dany's braids become more and more intricate and her hair grows longer, as is with tradition in Dothraki custom to never cut your hair if you haven't lost a battle. And then obviously she's wearing no clothes when she gives birth to her dragons, which is awesome. Season 2, Daenerys finds her right back in kind of like the muck of life when they're in the Red Waste and before they get to Qarth, and so she's back in her sort of like Dothraki traditional clothing. Once she gets to Qarth, the Qartheen obviously try and like dress her up, and everybody's trying to sort of impress her and woo her and make her their property, for lack of a better word. I think it's really interesting that the first time that Dany chooses to wear that Qartheen dress, she doesn't braid her hair at all. It's just like loosened down. And it's just a very different Daenerys. We don't really see her look like this very often. And the show also had a nice little meta moment of like her handmaids arguing over what she should wear to this party, and she opted for the dress that the man had picked out for her. Again, that goes not really great. So it's interesting that as she spends more time in Qarth, as you can see on this second photo, she starts like adapting their typical metal armor decoration into her own sort of like shoulder padded thing. So she's starting to hint towards being a little bit more guarded and a little bit more protective, but in this instance it's still that like delicate gold boning that's familiar. However, by the time that her dragons get stolen, she goes like into full warrior mode, and then she completely ditches this like delicate gold detailing, and instead she has this like leather shoulder pad. So it's the exact same shape as that previous gold one, but now it's leather, and she's getting a little bit more practical, and she's starting to kind of develop her own sense of style. And again, and on this slide right next to it where she's not wearing the armor, that was actually a scene where Jorah is speaking to her, and they're alone and she doesn't have that armor on, and Jorah kind of like oversteps his boundaries for a second. He gets like a little bit too familiar with her, and she sort of checks him in that moment, and then the armor's right back on for all of the rest of their scenes together. And so again, that's like a nice little piece of symbolism to like the second that she lets her guard down, she feels too vulnerable, and then she goes back to having the armor on. And so she has that armor on when she goes to the House of the Undying and finally gets her dragons back, and she has this whole vision, which comes full circle at the end of the show, as we all know. Season 3, Dany. This is again, we're finally starting to see like her own sense of style. And so this blue dress that she wears is like super iconic with the dragon tooth necklace. And there's a lot of like really great scaling detailing in the shoulders there. And again, it's the same shape that we saw her starting to wear in season 2, but now it's like a wrapped, it is a dress for lack of a better word, but she wears pants underneath all of them. Michelle Clapton said that she specifically always wanted Dany to have pants on in case like she needed to escape really quickly, which is very practical. I highly recommend always wearing pants. It's funny because it doesn't really like that doesn't come into play until the very end of season 5 when she actually does have to hop onto Drogo and fly away. But it's like cool to know that that was always there just in case anything ever went wrong. I also just love this cape situation. So that she wears this cape when she goes to Astapor, and this is when she gets her Unsullied. And that cape is very typical of the dress in Astapor, but Dany flips one shoulder over, which is not the way that everybody else wears it, and it's this nice little hint when she shows up that like she's about to fuck everybody over. She has a plan, she's gonna do something different, but we don't quite know what, but like that little flip of the cape is a nice nod to her coming storyline. And then of course, we all know what happens, it's great. Then we see Dany in this white dress, and this is the first time that she's ever been in like pure white on the show, and this is for her treaty with the Yunkai folks, who are, again, terrible men. It's really, you know, a nice pattern that Dany has in her life. Just speaking to terrible men all the time. This is when she is like fully deciding that she's going to start trying to abolish slavery in all of Essos. And it's interesting that she begins wearing what is effectively a slave collar that connects the fabric of her dress to her jewelry. She quickly goes out of that white dress and back into the blue, which is interesting because we'll see her in the white dress later on in season 5. Once she gets to Marine, she starts wearing white again. But in this is the season 4 finale, which is the big like Misa scene after she's freed everybody. And so she's wearing again that exact same blue dress that we saw her earlier on in the season, except now she has the slave collar not attached to her fabric, and she's wearing this like crossed metal leather belt that is very similar to what the Unsullied wear. And so she's sort of like cribbing from all of the people around her to help develop her own sense of style and her own panache. And then, of course, she gets to Marine. And so when she first arrives in Marine, she's still in this blue dress, again, still with the slave collar-inspired necklace that's detached from her fabric. But she quickly goes back into that white dress, and then all of a sudden the fabric is connected to her necklace once again, and this is the scene where she decides that she's going to stay in Marine. And so I think it's very indicative of her sort of attaching herself to this city and trying to plant roots and doing what she can do, but again, everything's gonna go terribly wrong. There's a pattern here. Pattern, folks. This is the first scene that we see her holding court as a queen in Marine, and I know it's probably like a little bit hard to see the details, but I liked the zoomed out shot because another thing to keep an eye on if you're ever rewatching the show is the way that Daenerys and Missandei's styles start to like reflect one another and play off of each other. So now Missandei is wearing the exact same white dress with like the connected slave collar necklace, except it's blue, and Dany is now wearing a blue dress, but it has this like white pleated detailing underneath it. And so as soon as like Dany starts like moving into this style of where Missandei also starts wearing it. This is a really cool dress, and it's so unusual, it's so unlike Daenerys, and it has that exact same shoulder shape with like the beaded detailing that's like a little bit scaly, and obviously the scales on the top, but this is definitely like the most revealing thing that Dany ever chooses to wear for herself, and I don't think it's a coincidence that this is the morning after she has sex for the first time since Drogo. This is right after her and Dario have sex. And so she's just, having a little moment. Just, a little me time in the morning. This is like a closer look at that pleated dress that she was wearing while she was holding court. This is what she's wearing when she chains up her dragons at the end of season 4. And so she is trying to, I think, suppress her Targaryen instincts, and she's really trying to be the queen of Marine, but it's tough. And again, like her style is starting to fluctuate. So she's not using that like strong angular shoulder anymore. She's not really leaning on like scaled imagery. Now she's trying to find this balance of like who she is as a queen in this city. At the end of season 4. Season 5, she goes full like, I'm wearing pure white, I'm like, she's emanating this sort of like regal quality. Obviously white, if you live in a city in medieval-esque times, like the odds of you getting that dress dirty are pretty high, but the fact that she doesn't, it indicates that like she lives at the very top of this pyramid. She's not really like among the people getting her hands dirty. She's sort of like removing herself from the hustle and bustle of the low-born folks, which is gonna come to bite her in the ass. But you can see that in the way that she starts to wear a lot more white. This is interesting because she's creeping that like scaling pattern back into her dress, but again, it's still white, and she's starting to do this like off-shouldered look, and that'll come back in a little bit. And then of course for the dragon pit scene, this is like the most elaborate, pure white dress that we ever see her in, with like this gorgeous dragon necklace, and of course that dress turns into this gray mess. Again, the pants, they came in handy. But it's like you wouldn't even know that she was wearing pants the whole time. But Michelle Clapton put them there for a reason. She gets captured by the Dothraki, and her white dress becomes this like dirty gray tunic looking thing, and her necklace is slowly chipping away as the Dothraki have control of her. However, she takes control of them in short order. And then she goes back into this like pseudo Dothraki look. It's not quite the way that her styling would have been in the earlier seasons. Also, this is a good time to note, Michelle Clapton did not do the costumes for the 6th season. So everything that you're seeing from folks in season 6 were done by the costume design team for Game of Thrones, but she was no longer kind of like spearheading it. And I think that you can tell, honestly, like the detailing kind of falls to the wayside, and we start just seeing like similar patterns to what people were wearing before. So this is not a Michelle Clapton design, but it is a Dany design. She also goes back to that sort of like Grecian-inspired wear right before she sets sail for Westeros. This is when she's speaking with Tyrion, and she names him Hand of the Queen, and it's a much like softer feminine look, I think. Not feminine, but like just like softer, like the draping, just the draping and the overall feel of it is again really unusual for Daenerys, and I think that this is like a moment of intimacy that she's having that she normally doesn't. She doesn't speak very frankly with people all the time, but this is a time where her and Tyrion are like really having a nice little heart-to-heart. And then she sets sail, and so it's cool that she's wearing like almost the same, like the exact same pattern and styling of that white dress from Marine, except now it's all black. She's going full Targaryen black, and she has this like really elaborate scaling on the shoulders, which is again kind of like blending in her styles that she had started to adapt for herself in season 3 with this like new mission to go to Westeros. And then she arrives in Westeros. I also love this dress. Season 7, Michelle Clapton very intentionally had everybody wearing mostly like monochrome and black. She just felt like, you know, winter was supposedly here. It doesn't snow everywhere, but winter is here, and the whole tone of the show is like all of these competing factions, and so everybody's very muted. However, you can see that like there is red embroidery in Daenerys' clothing, and this is the first time that she's worn black and red at the same time, which are House Targaryen's colors. Again, just like the super intricate beading that is just gorgeous and all hand done by Michelle Clapton and her team. And again, our pants, you know, she might have to go somewhere soon, so classic pants. This is the outfit that she's wearing in the throne room when her and Jon Snow meet for the first time, and she's obviously presenting herself as like the queenliest of queens and really like establishing her power, and it's not a coincidence that she looks the most like Viserys Targaryen in this moment. Again, the shoulder angle that she's been doing this whole time has been very evocative of Viserys, but like her new like massive dragon, like 3-headed dragon chain and the red cape are very evocative of this look that Viserys wore early on in season 1. And maybe we should have thought a little bit harder about the fact that she was suddenly channeling Viserys in season 7. I mean, Daenerys always like had this internal struggle going on. Obviously, she was raised by this abusive man. And I think that she spent a lot of time specifically trying not to be him and not to be her father. But at the same time, you know, the fire and blood was there. It was just her figuring out how she was going to channel that. I also just love this picture. It's like an album cover. It's great. This is the episode in which her and Jon Snow go into the caves for the first time together, and I don't know if anyone was on my foreshadowing panel yesterday or here. Yesterday I mentioned this, but she's now wearing a gray cape instead of a red cape. Almost everything about her outfit is the same sort of Targaryen power look, but I don't think it's a coincidence that she starts wearing House Stark-ish colors as soon as she's starting to soften up to Jon Snow and sort of consider, getting her a little king in the north time. And then of course, this amazing coat. Love this coat. Would wear in this weather even. So Michelle Clapton really took Daenerys into a whole new realm with this outfit. Obviously she needed to be warm to fly beyond the wall to save her boo and his friends from their stupid plan. I love that this it almost looks like tiger stripes to me. But with, again, this unique Michelle Clapton twist that only she could possibly ever come up with. I just, look at this. And, it took me so long to get this screenshot because they only show this for, half a second and then she hops on the dragon. Anyways, it's amazing. I know. Sorry, Sam. This isn't about you. Talk to you later. She has almost the same coat when season 8 starts, except it is a little bit different. Now the threading in between the lines of fur is much more red. Again, she's starting to lean into her Targaryen colors a little bit more. But it is really interesting that she doesn't wear black and red all that often, and when she does, it's usually mixed with another color like gray or white, which are both generally associated with House Stark. Yeah, just more. I just want to. This whole panel could just be pictures of its coat. The next episode, when she knows that this is, I think, when Dany realizes that things are not going the way that she thought that they would when she came north. She was obviously expecting a much more warm welcome and for people to actually regard her as their queen, no questions asked. And so I again don't think it's a coincidence that she starts darkening her look as things are going poorly for her. It's interesting because I just said in season 7, her going into gray felt like a nod to her warming up to Jon Snow, and in this case, her going to gray feels like her starting to close herself off to that sort of I'm gonna be a heroine in my snowy white coat for everybody. I think that this is her starting to be a little bit more calculated about how things are going and starting to make different political choices. But then again, she pops that coat back on for her big hero moment in The Long Night, which is awesome. I also love the addition of this fur cape detail on one shoulder. It's great. And then right back into her grays for the episode 4, The Last of the Starks, which again is when things are starting to go very poorly for her. She wears this gray dress for the funeral ceremony, and then at the welcome feast, this is the very first time that she's ever worn a red dress, and it's the exact same top coat shape as the outfit that we saw her on the season 7 premiere, except it has that pleating on the bottom, like her Marine dress. So we saw that one in Marine where it was all blue and then it had white pleating in the center. So this is all red and it has black pleating in the center. And this is the scene in which she really confronts Jon Snow and tries to tell him he cannot tell anybody his identity, and she starts to really, I think, panic about the fact that her status in Westeros is, again, not what she thought it would be. And here she is in full Targaryen red and really trying to claim that name and her right to the throne. She wears a different variant of this gray and red dress when she goes to treat with Cersei. Again, this is the beginning of the end for Dany, which is really sad. Sorry. The bells. Oh, the bells. This look is, I think, like really incredible. It has like bigger scaling patterns, and so I think that she's like even more closely associating herself with her dragons. Well, sorry, there's only one left now. Sorry, everybody. With Drogon, and in the like, obviously the bells takes place primarily like all during the day. And this fabric that she's wearing, it's hard to see in a still image, but when you rewatch the episode, it's really like iridescent, like it almost looks purple sometimes when the camera swings around her. And you can tell that it's not a pure black dress. It has a little bit of color in it. She obviously still has the red sash detailing. But then she makes the choice that she makes, and in the next episode, everything's really overcast, and now all of that color is no longer really perceptible in this dress. All of a sudden, it really does just look like a pure black dress with that scaling pattern. And obviously, this is where her story ends. So, sorry, Dave. But it's a really pretty dress you died in. With pants underneath, probably. So, let's talk about Sansa Stark. Or actually, does anyone have quick questions about Dany? I can just do like Dany-focused questions. Yeah.
Do you think that when she's wearing anything that's white, including like in Marine, that is more of like who she thinks she's supposed to be versus like when she's adapting her dark colors, it's really who she is? Yeah,
so the question was like, do we think that when she's wearing white, it's her like projecting an idea of who she wants to be? And absolutely, I think that she, especially in Marine, is like trying on different personas because this is the first time that she's really tried to rule an entire city. And yeah, she's trying to emulate what the people of Marine might think of a queen, but also not wearing all of their traditional garb. Like, she very intentionally is trying to like mix things up, but also try and keep things stable. Again, this is not a great strategy. It does not work out for her, and Lord knows what Dario's doing in Marine now. Probably not wearing white dresses and burning people alive. Sansa Stark. Look at her little baby face. She's so cute. One thing that I really love about the storytelling of Sansa's costumes is that from the very beginning we are told that she makes all of her own dresses. So this is obviously the scene where she's speaking with Cersei. She made this dress, and so she starts out with a very distinctive style that is northern, but it's also her own because she's the person making these clothes. It's also cool because you can see that her and Arya are supposed to be wearing the same dress. I mean, they do sometimes wear like the exact same one. Although you'll notice on Arya's that it has little like threads right on the shoulder, and that's because Arya like rips the sleeves off of her dress when she like is really trying not to be a lady. And you can also see like the knotting on her on the front of it is all like loose and undone, and it's just like, I'm fucking Arya, I don't care about anything, whereas like Sansa's are all like perfectly tied, and like her sleeves are not detachable because why on earth wouldn't I want my sleeves? So yeah, that's a fun little Arya Easter egg. Once she gets to King's Landing, Sansa is the kind of person that really likes to like literally mimic the person that she admires. So we see her hairstyle change into like the typical like southern ladies of the court. She starts wearing dresses that are like almost identical to Cersei's, except at first they are in this softer blue. I also, like, they never explain this in the show, but like Cersei 100% had that dress made for Sansa. This is the dress that she wears to the throne room right after Ned is captured, and she's trying to plead on his behalf. And so it's like, you can tell that Cersei is not only like emotionally manipulating her, but is like literally like dressing her, and that she's just kind of like a doll and like this like puppet in their war games, which is not cool, Cersei. It's also interesting that by the time, so the picture on the, I know directions, left, she does not have that like belt, but she is like even more dressed up for the scene in which Ned is executed, which is really sad. because she doesn't know what's coming. And then immediately afterwards, we see her in the exact same style of dress, except now it's pink, which is a very Cersei color. So they have essentially not only stripped like her entire family, but they're also not even putting her in her own house colors anymore. Blue isn't a color of House Stark, but it is like a color that's very associated with all of like the northern color palettes. Literally even the show, like when you cut to a scene in the north, like looks a little bit blue compared to King's Landing, which is very like orangey and gold and red sometimes. So yeah, so again, she's right in Cersei's grasp. Jumping forward a little bit, the scene in which, I forget which season, this is 2 still, right? Yeah, this is the 7th episode of season 2. This is when Sansa wakes up and realizes that she's started her period and is like panicking, and Cersei basically like brings her in and has like a little dove talk. And they're both wearing dresses that look very similar to the ones that they were wearing on the day of Ned Stark's execution. And again, it kind of like brings up all of this like trauma that Sansa's experiencing all over again, and just like the horrors that she has associated with that day and how she's just kind of reliving them over and over and over again. The Battle of Blackwater is when we really see Sansa start to wear this purple tone, which I think is so cool because it's what you get if you mix the blue that she was wearing in the north and the red that Cersei wears, and get purple. And so purple is kind of like her limbo color, I like to refer to it. Like it's what she wears while she's trapped, but she's slowly starting to get a little bit of agency and she's getting a little bit more confident. I mean, in this scene, she literally threatens both Joffrey and Tyrion, basically, in this like really like smart backwards way. And obviously her and Shay are having this like really great bond and starting to support each other. And so, yeah, this is season 3 Sansa. So again, we are seeing her in this purple dress. They're all kind of like varying patterns. She's obviously probably having someone else in King's Landing dress her now. She's not making her own clothes at the moment, but she's wearing all of these like purple patterned dresses that you can see. And yeah, so the patterning, as you can see on this, like the right-hand image, it starts to skew a little bit less purple and a little bit more gold. And then her wedding dress is purple and gold, but you almost can't even tell that that's purple. Like, it is so covered in Lannister gold, and this is obviously the moment in which she is like fully sucked into Lannister plotting, which is, again, sad. This dress is also incredible. Yeah, so these are all like hand-beaded detailing. So the belt around her has like a Stark direwolf and a Lannister lion, and like these like little roses, and just, yeah, it's incredible. Then the Red Wedding happens, and Sansa's fucking sad, and we're all sad. And she's like right back into those purple-toned dresses again. But then she gets out. I just sort of like fast forwarded through her wearing a bunch more purple dresses basically. But Littlefinger takes her the veil, and she has to put on this disguise that they call Elaine. The way that Michelle Clapton refers to it is just Dark Sansa, which I love. So she's literally just wearing all black. She's dyed her hair. And this is when we first see her needle necklace. So it's this necklace that is obviously like a circular design at the bottom with a chain, and then at the very end of it is like a very long, basically sewing needle. And the way that Michelle Clapton liked to think of it was Arya has her needle, this is now Sansa's needle. So this is like her visual representation of like trying to take back agency and trying to fight back against the people that have ruined her entire fucking life. Sorry, I'll stop cursing. It's early in the morning. Michelle Clapton, this is a picture of Michelle Clapton. Michelle Clapton has actually like always worn jewelry that looks very similar to Sansa's needle necklace. You can see it in this picture, but she was even wearing something similar to it in like the 2011 videos that HBO would put out about costumes. So I think it's pretty cool that Michelle Clapton just like took this jewelry that she was making for herself and then gave it to like one of the most badass characters in the show. And was like, this is your symbol now too. So that's pretty rad. So again, Sansa eventually gets to Winterfell, and she's still in her like Dark Sansa mode. She's still trying to have as much agency as possible. And then, again, everything goes horribly wrong. I skipped right past her wedding dress. I'm sorry, I don't know if we all need to like look at Sansa in that dress again, like Bran Stark did, like a creep. She wears a pretty white wedding dress on her wedding night. But she's in this like, for lack of a better word, like Bolton clothing, basically, with like the cross pattern cape. And Theon helps her escape, and then we get to season 6 Sansa, which again, Michelle Clapton didn't do the costumes for season 6, but I do really love this piece that she wears. This is the first time that Sansa's able to make her own clothes again in a really long time, and the fact that she chooses this like rich blue velvety fabric and then embroiders her own direwolf on her chest. It's almost like she's wearing like a version of armor, like she makes Jon Snow the cape with a little direwolf sigil embroidered into it, and this is her Battle of the Bastards look. Season 7 Sansa wears this entirely new outfit, and so this, as you can see at the top, it has a collar that's very similar to the kinds of collars that Catelyn Stark used to wear. It's a very like northern style of dress, and it has 2 direwolf heads at either end. You can't really see it very often because she's always wearing this cape most of the time, but HBO released this picture on their Making Game of Thrones blog to give you a better idea of it. And then Michelle Clapton specifically said that this the leather belt wrap around her is specifically supposed to be kind of like a message to Littlefinger. Like, this is like her way of being like, you are not going to touch me. And like, nobody is going to touch me. I am now like in my home, doing my own thing. Kindly leave me alone. Which I love. And that's just, oh, and you can see that she's still wearing the needle necklace periodically throughout this. She keeps that for the rest of the season. That is like always her signature look. This is the scene in which her and like Arya have this little confrontation in season 7. I love this version of this is like a slightly different dress that Sansa's wearing. The patterning on the skirt is almost like exactly the Flame Man of House Bolton. Yeah, I know. So like, not only is she wearing this like belt that is like a specific message to Littlefinger, but now she's like incorporating her former tormentor's like sigil into her own clothing, and I think it's really cool that Sansa's just like basically taking the things that could have like completely broken her down and making them a part of what's keeping her strong again. And here she is in season 7, or season 8. This is the premiere of season 8. So she's kind of like in this exact same look for the premiere. And then we get armored Sansa, which is amazing. This is the outfit that she wears for her little tete-a-tete with Daenerys, in which she refuses to back down and still wants to know if the North can be independent. Again, her needle necklace is like so prominent. And I like that she's now like kind of like hitching it up underneath her bodice. Like, I don't know. It almost reminds me of like just like having like an ID tag at work, except she's like, I can stab you with this at any moment. But I just love the like intricate like leather crisscrossing of this bodice. And again, like Sansa's not gonna go out there and fight during the long night necessarily, but she is doing what she can to protect the North. And I think it's very evident in this outfit that she wears here. She, again, wears like a variant of this for the election of King Bran, her brother. And she has this like, yeah, the patterning on this, like her full skirt is just like a little, it's cool. It's like, it almost looks like felt from far away, but it's not, because I don't think that felt exists in Westeros. Although Bran's blankets look really comfy. It's good to know. And then we get Queen in the North. I love this entire outfit so much. So Sansa's coronation dress, Michelle Clapton specifically made the bodice to look like the branches of a weirwood tree. Michelle Clapton posted about this on Instagram, which everyone should follow Michelle Clapton on Instagram, but she like did like a fun little breakdown that was really cool for everybody. So the bodice, which almost looks to me like it's like 3D printed, like it's like this really cool like modern take on what a bodice dress could look like. And also in this scene, you see a pair of hands like finishing the tie right at the bottom of right at the bottom of the bodice, and those are Michelle Clapton's hands. She got like a little cameo at the end of the season, which is cool. This is a back look at the dress, and so it's very asymmetrical, which Michelle Clapton said on her Instagram post is a nod to Arya Stark's styling. Arya has that like asymmetrical cape for all of season 7 and 8. Yeah, we have an awesome. There she is. So yeah, so Sansa's dress is also symmetrical. So only one of the sleeves is like this super long sleeve that has a weirwood beaded detailing in it, and the other sleeve has like a feather patterning on the side, which Sansa was always like kind of derogatorily referred to as a little bird. And I love that for her coronation gown, she's kind of like giving everyone the middle finger, whoever thought that she was not capable of anything. And oh yeah, so the fabric of this dress is the same fabric of Marjorie Tyrell's wedding dress, just dyed a slightly different color. And also Dark Sansa, like that Dark Sansa dress was the same fabric as well, but black. So it's kind of a cool through line of all of these seasons. Some detailing on the weirwood leaves. Yeah, aren't those beautiful? And then the scaling pattern on her sleeve is the same as like the direwolf sigil, like just that like outline of the direwolf sigil. That's what that patterning is supposed to be on her sleeve, again with the feathers. And she still has her needle. It's not as prominent, but it is hanging from the bottom of her bodice of her dress, so she's never letting go of that little guy. And then her cape has a direwolf head at the very end of it, which again was like hard to see in the actual episode, but you can like see all of these like zoomed in pictures, so it's like this really intricate beaded direwolf head. And her crown, when we see her crown for the first time, it's placed on her head from behind, and I don't think that it was an accident that it looks very similar to Cersei's crown until you see the front of it. So the front of it is obviously two direwolf heads, but the entire like outline is exactly the same as Cersei's crown, which is pretty cool. So that's Sansa. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to like blow through Cersei's slides here right now because I'm running out of time because I have so much fun talking about it. Cersei Lannister. Love this look. This is her pilot look. It's very like lush and drape and fur, and I love her hair is like not really as like finished as we see it in the rest of the season. Also, Cersei 100% invented the cold shoulder look that is everywhere now. Love it. This is her at the Winterfell feast. This is also the first time that we see her with that little emerald crown at the top of her head. And then for most of the first season, Cersei's really in all, like a lot of pinks and kind of like lighter, softer colors. I think that this is when, you know, she's obviously plotting to take power, but she doesn't have it yet, and that's reflected in sort of like the softness of her clothing. This green dress that she wears, the day that this is the day that Robert Baratheon dies and her and Joffrey seize the throne, and Ned Stark is arrested. We never see her in this color again, but Cersei very notably has green eyes, and I think, and this is noted in the book, especially in this scene, but I just love this look. Season 2, obviously Cersei now feels like she has total control, even though Joffrey is a little bit of a wild card. But she starts wearing like really deep Lannister reds more consistently. She still does like the pink tones, but it's always like really elaborate and intricate, and she's kind of like showing off in a way that she wasn't in the first season. A really like noticeable exception to this is the day that Myrcella sails away, and she's wearing this like very like distinctive blue dress with these bird imageries embroidered into it, and this is like a really vulnerable moment for Cersei, and in that moment she's kind of wearing this softer dress. You can also see her Lannister lion pendant necklace in this shot, and that'll come back in a little bit. She starts to wear like literal armored pieces on her gowns as well. The obviously most distinctive one comes at the Battle of Blackwater, where she has this like corset of gold armor, which I just think is so badass and really just shows how like, I don't know, in the way that like Sansa was able to come into power and kind of take control while still like wearing her like softer clothing, like Cersei feels the need to have this like outward statement about the fact that like I'm in control, and as we know, like anyone who must say that probably doesn't actually have as much control as Tywin would say. I also like that as soon as Marjorie comes into the picture, Cersei starts wearing the same sort of like structured, like almost like honeycomb like dresses. Which again kind of is like reflecting her insecurity with having Marjorie around, and she feels like that control that she was overly confident about is starting to slip away from her grasp. And then obviously her boy dies, and we start seeing Cersei in all of her funeral blacks for a really, really long time, as she's mourning Joffrey. And then in short order, she's mourning her father. So this is the start of season 5 after both Tywin and Joffrey have died. So she's still wearing the same shape dress, but it's obviously just all black now. But it is interesting that her hair starts to get like even more elaborate, almost in a mirror to the way that Dany, or an inverse of the way that like Dany wears her hair more elaborately to like show that she's winning victories. I feel like Cersei starts to wear her hair more elaborately as like a way of trying to cling on to this idea that like I can still like manipulate people, I'm still fine, it's fine, and she's not fine. Super not fine. Like this is probably the most elaborate that her hair gets in season 5, and it's just before the High Sparrow has her arrested. And this is also a good shot to show you the like sort of like kimono inspiration of Cersei's dresses. So in the same way that the Lannister armor has like samurai pieces into it, like the way that Cersei's like wrap dresses with like the really long sleeves is a little bit kimono-esque. And then everything goes terribly wrong. Again, there's a pattern here, folks. Season 5 is bleak. This is the start of season 6. So she takes herself out of those mourning blacks for the first time when she goes to think that she's greeting Myrcella, which is like so sad because she just immediately has to put on a black dress again because Myrcella is dead. Sorry. And this is when we start to see Cersei exploring more of the like shoulder patterning. So this is a little bit of a more square off shoulder with like really embroidered detailing, and then of course we get to the Winds of Winter, and so this is when she blows up the Sept of Baelor. Michelle Clapton, again, didn't design like any of these earlier season 6 dresses, but she did come back for the finale of season 6 just to do Cersei's dress. So she did this dress, which Cersei wears as the Sept of Baelor is being blown up, and then Michelle Clapton also designed her coronation dress and her crown, which we're back into like Cersei with armor, except now it's like for real this time. She's doing the darn thing. I love this dress. Michelle Clapton also specifically said you can see it's a little bit short when she's walking, like it hovers above the ground a little bit. And again, this was like Michelle Clapton trying to like imbue some practicality into the dresses. So she said like it doesn't make sense to have a long train, you can't move around super easily. So Cersei started to sort of channel Tywin Lannister and like wearing a little bit more practical dress, and this like punched out pattern is almost exactly what Tywin wore in earlier seasons, except Cersei's found a way to make it like completely form-fitting and more queenly. As season 7 progresses, Cersei is just like gaudy as all hell. Like, she has hired every single person in King's Landing to like embroider all of these like elaborate shoulder pieces and neck pieces, and she wears like a different elaborate dress almost every single time. I love this look. She only literally wears it for one scene, I think, in season 7, but it has this like really great lion brooch at the top. And this is a close-up look at one of the shoulder detailing on her dresses. I also love this one, which she wears just when she's poisoning Tyene. It's like this like satin version of her dress with, again, like really embellished shoulders. It's gorgeous. And then we get to her season 7, Dragon Pit. Again, I'm obsessed with this dress. It's like a very matte black with this almost like chainmail underneath. And Michelle Clapton specifically did this spine detailing down the back, which again you only see for like 2 seconds in the actual episode. But Michelle Clapton said that she wanted it to feel like almost like it was like a scorpion, like it was a sting that you see when an animal turns its back and is walking away from you. It was like an indication that Cersei's lying because she tells everybody in this moment that she's going to send Lannister troops to the north. This was Michelle Clapton's way of being like, like, that's not what she's doing. So got a close-up look at that, like spine detailing in the dress. And then she has this really great fur cape for her sad goodbye scene with Jaime. And also note the ring on her finger. I'm gonna mention that in a second. Season 8 starts off, so she's back. This is similar to her coronation gown, except like even more elaborate. She has like these 2 shoulder pads, and they're also a little bit more of a gold now than a silver. So while she was a completely monochromed throughout all of season 7, she's now starting to incorporate a little bit more of the Lannister colors into her outfit. And that same detailing that was on the back of her dress in the season 7 finale is now on the front of her dress, because Cersei is not even trying to deceive people anymore. She's just straight up evil. Like, she's not even trying to hide it. Like, that part of her that was maybe the like evil sting hiding behind her is now in the front. And then she takes that same dress and now it's full Lannister colors. So now she's in Lannister red, and she has her Lannister lion pendant like reworked into a chain for the front of her dress. And she's trying to kind of like reclaim that house color, and this is the dress that she dies in. And again, she has that ring on her finger when in her death scene with Jaime, and I like to think that this is like almost like her wearing Casterly Rock on her hand. Like, she did, like, we never see her in Casterly Rock ever, but we know what it looks like. And this is just like a cool piece of jewelry that I think is her like keeping home with her. And so, in conclusion, I'm around if you want to ask me questions or anything like that. And I, like I said, I have cards if you want to pre-order my book right up here. Thank you.